Good morning and welcome to day one of Digital Workplace Experience. Thanks, Bryce and Paul, for having me. And so I was asked to kind of frame up what I see are the key challenges, what's facing us. So we have things ahead of us that we've never had to deal with before. And it's a time of great opportunity as much as it is a time of great challenge. I'm kind of trying to unbox the things that I've seen by talking to dozens of digital workplace efforts every year if I can, as much as I can. Working on these efforts myself as well, trying to figure out, especially in large organizations, large global organizations, we're facing a lot of headwinds for driving the kind of change we would like to see, and even the targets are changing. So sustainability has become a key issue for us. We're not moving faster, but the world is, and we'll look at that data in just a minute. So the future of work is arriving in a very decentralized way, right? Some organizations are a little farther ahead, and some are, I still walk into organizations and they look like they're right out of the 1990s, right? It really depends on how far you are away from competitive pressures is what we see. The challenge is that we now live in exponential times. The accelerating growth of new technology coming in, often from the consumer world, but even the enterprise world has so much new software. You know, many of you have probably seen Scott Brinker's charts on marketing technology. That's where the Cambrian explosion seems to be the worst right now. He was tracking about 300 marketing solutions in the industry around 2011. He just released his latest charts, and it's over 7,000 marketing solutions are available to drive marketing campaigns, to do analytics, whatever it is. That is an untenable amount of change, at least using the methods we have now, the traditional linear model for working and adopting technology, where we try and do it all of ourselves, essentially. And at this point, I'm often asked, that this graph is great, but do we really need all this tech change? Is that a good thing? And I often respond with this other chart here, is that overall, technology has been a tremendous boon for mankind. If we look at the graph of human population growth over time, it maps well with the same curve in that if you look at medicine and housing and infrastructure and so many things that technology affects, it has been very, very good to us for the most part, right? All technology is a two-edged sword. So we have to figure out how are we going to deal with this curve here. Organizations don't change that way, as we'll look at. Yet we see they quoted my shadow IT figure. I was some research I did with IBM as we began to realize that the pace of shadow IT, the number of unsanctioned solutions for digital workplace and other topics as well, was increasing, right? It wasn't, again, not a linear change either. So it was a real challenge. And that's what we're going to see. More change in our lives and business in the next 10 years than the last 40 combined. Things like Internet of Things is going to be a big part of the digital workplace. Everything's going to be connected and instrumented. Everything's going to become intelligent soon. AI is going to get baked into everything, whether you like that marketing term or not. Smart technologies of all kinds, things like Alexa, personal voice assistants at work are going to be a big deal. And I've been testing this out with workers and saying, well, would you like to be able to ask a personal assistant, where is the next meeting room, or where is my colleague right now? Or where can I find the latest sales numbers? And they're very positive. They want to see that. They want you to deliver it, and they would like to do it right now if you can. Those types of things make life much easier, right? So these are the kind of changes that we're going to see. And up till now, I think that a lot of folks kind of looked at digital workplace efforts as, well, it's nice, but it's certainly nowhere near as good as what I have at home, right? On the Digital Workplace Experience Twitter hashtag, had a great quote from Fletcher Previn who said, why do we have technology like the Jetsons at home, but the Flintstones at work, right? So that's the challenge. And people want to have that kind of amazement that these new technologies and the effectiveness that they can bring. Civilization advances when hard things become easy. And that's what everyone is looking at us to do, to make hard things easy. But it's hard to do that in the current environment. And so the key insight here is that the linear thinking and the linear models for change that we have right now doesn't prepare us for this world that we now have suddenly found ourselves in. And that's what Paul and Bryce asked me to talk about is, so how can we ride this curve a little bit better? Right? Do we have to think and work differently? And that is almost certainly the case, right? And so if we can understand exponential tech change just a little bit better, maybe we could prepare. We could start saying, all right, how do we create organizational processes and models that can change faster, that can survive disruption, because often you're trying to roll out some new technology and it's made completely obsolete by the next version that the vendor is going to ship to you in 3 weeks. Right? Like, what are you going to do now, right? And so digital has different rules than things that we've done in the past, and we're still just learning all of this together, right? This is a great table from Exponential Organizations that we have to plan out for what it's going to cost and how easy it's going to be in 5 years, right? Because things like Moore's Law, digital technology is driven by these power laws. Moore's Law is the most powerful one, which says that whatever you're doing today is going to be either twice as fast or twice as cheap in 18 months. Take your pick on how you want to do that, right? And that's not a big deal over 18 months, but over 5 years, it dramatically changes what's possible. So your design of your digital workplace has got to take into account, right? All these AI technologies require a lot of compute power, right? Especially things like image search. Google has a variety of ways of solving it, and that's why they're using that to find our company's logo, as opposed to our resources. We don't have the technologies or the compute power to do a lot of these things. But if we think about how easy it's going to be soon to do that, then we can plan for that future, what doesn't look possible today. Because the real challenge is most organizations can only change linearly, or at best logarithmically, but the world is changing exponentially. So the challenge I put up is that we have to find ways of changing at scale. And it's going to require new ways of thinking about who's doing digital transformation of the workplace, how many people that we need. We might need a lot more bandwidth and capacity, I would argue, if we're going to keep up. If we're not going to continue falling behind, the Jetsons will continue to pull away from the Flintstones unless we find new ways of transforming, right? A sustainable way, right? Because if you're in software development, you know that there's this thing called heroic programming, which is at the end of a project, the last 20% is always 80% of the work, right? In all technology projects. And everyone stays there the last few months, stays late at night, works weekends, and gets that technology shipped out to the customer, doing whatever it takes. That isn't sustainable. Heroic programming is not a repeatable way to do it, not without causing everyone to want to quit and find a better place to work. So that's our challenge. And most companies are behind. It's like the old Lake Wobegon joke is, most companies are below average when it comes to digital in general. This is a McKinsey analysis of a whole bunch of large organizations and their digital maturity in general. And there's a few leaders. Some organizations have figured something out. In our workshops yesterday, that's what we tried to explore. What have they figured out? How are they doing it? How do they have such a high level of digital maturity than the rest of us? And most of us aren't there, right? And there's a few emerging leaders, and there's everyone else. So what's good is that that we have a lot of company. What's bad is that in digital is a winner-take-all environment, and very much so if we look at the data. This is the imperative that I often give, saying, if you don't digitize well enough and fast enough to be competitively relevant, to stay competitively relevant, bad things will happen. This is some very authoritative data from Standard & Poor's and Richard Foster. They analyzed what happens to companies over time. And the average lifespan is dropping precipitously. And the leading cause, this was in the MIT Technology Review, leading cause is failure to adapt to digital change. That's the number one cause for companies to go out of business, be merged or acquired. And so 60% of the Fortune 500 since the year 2000 are gone primarily from lack of digital adaptation. So it's an imperative. And I also did a CIO survey last year that showed digital workplace at the very bottom because everything else is much more visible on the outside of the organization, right? Everyone can see it. Everything's measured, and that's how revenue is generated, right? But the work to deliver whatever is sold is actually done in the digital workplace. And it has survival implications for organizations on whether you can work faster, better, and cheaper than your competitors ultimately, right? It really matters to this graph right here, what we are doing, even though it doesn't feel like it and we don't get credit for it. So we need a sustainable approach to constant change in the digital workplace. We want to even catch up some if we can, right? What if we could even do that? Wouldn't that be exciting? Right? That's the questions I've been asking increasingly the last 5 years. In the last 5 years, I've worked on a number of very large global digital workplace projects. And they all look roughly the same in that there's a tiny, tiny team of people to try and automate tens or hundreds of thousands of people's digital experiences, right, inside the organization. And most of what we have today is just, it's either inefficient or we're getting better at systematizing. I mean, overall, digital workplace teams I see are getting more mature, more capable, smarter, more transdisciplinary. They can do more things and connect the dots. But they're slow because they're just limited. We're given limited resources. It would be great if we could find a way that make it more sustainable and not have to do the heroic project rollout type of thing, especially since we have more technologies every year that we have to both manage and roll out, right? So we need a pathway to sustainable development if we can find it. So the other big change that we're seeing is this focus away just from the technology to how can we really think about, just like the customer experience conversation has said, well, if we give customers a whole bunch of touch points that all work differently, all look different and don't share data, they're going to have a confusing and disorganized experience with us. And since smoothing that experience out, can have tremendous benefits. There's a lot of data that shows that, right? Customer experience leaders have by far the higher financial results of the laggards. And the same is we're finding with digital workplace. We have a bunch of confusing touch points that all work differently. We have data in silos. Search still doesn't work decades later, right? And so we need to figure out, take our thinking a level up and say not just the technology, but the technology as viewed by the humans as part of a journey, not as an individual experience. And our challenge is, of course, we have the intranet team and the SharePoint teams and the unified communication teams who are all thinking about their touch points, right? That's how we've organized. And so that kind of unlocks the key to the thinking of the issue is as the same customer experience discussion is happening, the same thing is happening now with employee experience, taking the physical environment, the technological environment, even the culture into account and unifying it. The thinking about, all right, what are we trying to accomplish or what's the value we're trying to create? What journeys do we have to enable? And that gets us asking the right questions. And then the next question is going to be how do we realize those journeys? And at the same time, digital workplaces now suddenly become an employee experience, become much more involved about the human aspects of work, right? So we have the work itself, which remains really important, and we have to start really focusing more on the details. How do we enable sales? How do we enable project management? How do we enable operations? Those are generally the top 3 areas that digital workplace really needs to get better at improving. But the next generation of workers want a lot more. Work is a lifestyle for them, very much so. And so they care about personal growth in a way that previous generations didn't. You go to your job, you define yourself by your work, it's a career. Well, they're much more interested in we're not talking professional growth, right? We're talking personal growth. Contribution awareness, corporate social responsibility, their well-being. I actually talked to the CIO of SAP. We're talking about a very conservative German company. And he says, when I think about the customers, the users that I have to service, I believe my job is managing their happiness. I had never heard a CIO ever say that before. He says that's where it's heading, right? That right now we live in a completely different, very wealthy world that has never been in this situation before, where we have advanced technology infusing everything and affecting everything. And the people who are in charge of that have tremendous impact on the lives of the workers. And so the new digital workplace is taking the game to the whole new level. And we're seeing enlightened IT leaders are starting to say that. I've heard similar things since then. This was a couple years ago that he told me that. So that is creating more challenge too. It's not just technological change. The people are changing too, and their expectations are much higher. Right, and there's, we were talking in our workshops, employee engagement platforms is a whole new category of digital workplace that's growing, and many people have even heard of it, but it's going to directly affect these types of things to realize them. And our employee experience must be a little bit more future-proof. If you don't know Ross Dawson, he's a good friend of mine, he's a futurist from Australia. This is one of the charts that I really agree with about how things have moved from. We're expecting much more mobile-ready experiences, much more free-form employment. What matters to us, what we value most, has really been shifting. That we're moving away from working for companies to working for marketplaces, right? Where the best company in the moment can get our time to work on what's important for them, right? And that's what matters for us. There's just all these changes, in economics and technology and labor, and we have to start baking this in. Like when I talk to HR teams, they say, We're trying to we want our talent management platforms to be able to build hybrids. If you need to staff a team, we can tell you the best people in the company or outside the company, and put them on your project today if we have to do that. Right? So what Paul is really passionate about is happening. Right? I actually actively see this happening in the top echelon of organizations, up there with the leaders. Right? And again, we want to be, or should want to be involved in those discussions as opposed to just talking about documents and files and conversations, right? So that's our challenge. So this will require an entirely new level of dedication to user needs. Because often whatever we've developed, we're quite happy to say, the way the vendor has designed it, we might want to configure it a little bit, and then we're going to throw it over the wall, and we're not going to adapt it very much to the user's needs. And we can't do that anymore, right? Because there's so many choices. We are no longer sole source for technology in the company, far, far from it. Right? We'll look at that data in just a moment. So for all the reasons I talked about, the workers changing and their needs are expanding. They want us to treat them at a whole new different way, at a new level, and meet them there, right? That even the usability of these systems, the complexity of it. In fact, I've argued recently many times that our job is increasingly complexity management, right? Making this simpler, making it easier to use and access all this information and technology and all the people that are housed within it. And so things like user-centered design. I'm not talking about any specific technique. Design thinking is all the rage right now to say, we've got to take the employee journey and really look at it from their lens, and not these artificial seams. There's a thing called Conway's Law in software that says the structure of your solution will look like the structure of your organization. And because most organizations have 3 to 6 collaboration groups, when you sit down in front of your workplace, you actually can't even find all your collaboration tools. There's no place to even locate them, right? We don't have good structures for them. So we need to have this entirely new level of dedication. But I'm asking for you guys to do a lot of things, aren't I? Right? Deal with rapid tech change. Deal with rising expectations, sky-high expectations from the next generation of workers who will be the dominant. 2020, Millennial and Gen Z will be running our companies. They'll be the majority, right? And they have all these expectations, right? And then become really user-centric and design employee experiences, right? And you're not going to be getting the quantum leap in budget to make that happen. This is what I was asked to talk to you about. So what are we going to do, all right? So we have to make this transition to a softer, more designed, more future-ready employee experience using our digital workplace tools. Right, that's the challenge. But we're facing fierce headwinds of change. This is one of the graphs you can find flying around the internet showing how each generation of technology is adopted faster. Right? The new Nintendo game on the mobile devices, I can't remember that. That's actually now the new fastest adopted technology. It used to be the tablet, which reached mainstream in 18 months. Right? Went from being an emerging technology to mainstream in 18 months. So now there's faster. It's happening even faster. So we can't get a major new technology out the door in a year, right? We can do pilots before then, sure. But if you're a large organization, it's not going to happen. Just the cybersecurity checks you have to do on that, the audits you have to do on that, can take months to get that out. So what's happening is they're not waiting. The lines of business aren't waiting. The workers aren't waiting. And I've asked I received a call from a large professional services organization a little while back in a total panic. They did an audit and discovered 15% of their projects are being run in WhatsApp, right? And they're terrified because they can't pull that data back, they can't shut it down, they can't do anything about it whatsoever. And of course, the real reason people did that is because it was the easiest way to get that job done, right? So, and they felt like they had no choice. Well, the tools I'm given were insufficient. But 15% for a large global organization is a big number. It's indicative of a major problem. And I would consider them fairly advanced, right, in their digital workplace. And so this thing called shadow IT, which nobody wants to talk about or deal with, is continuing to get worse, right? Or, I would argue, better, right? That's going to be our challenge. I've talked to a number of CIOs who say, oh no, I look at this, I got to keep an eye on it anyway for security reasons. I got to make sure we get our data back and we lock it down. But it's also an innovation lab for me. I have my workers constantly trying to find better solutions all the time, and I'm not paying for that. They're just doing it, right? And then I can harness it. I can say, no, we'll give you something better than that, because they often don't know any better, right? Or no, that's a great idea, let's make that work. Right? Let's make that safe and secure in our world, right? And so a lot of us say it's bad, but the business doesn't think so. They have customers to make happy, and they have workers even to make happy. So the challenge is we have less time than we think on that side, right? Even though most of us are below average, and which is okay. And we do have to figure out some way of rising, right? Because again, the expectations, the yardsticks continue to change. And so we have to figure out, we must develop some kind of strategy that encompasses a fuller range of the capabilities that we have. There is no one set of collaboration tools. There never was. It was always a dream, no matter what vendor will tell you. That to get the job done right, you often need the best tool for the job, right? And we're going to have to manage that whole complicated portfolio. By the way, it was 50% shadow IT in 2016. It's higher than that now. We don't actually have good data, though, to see how much higher it is. And so we have a lot of these tools and technologies for the digital employee experience, some which we've created. I call that the core employee experience, right? That's what we're in charge of. We're not in charge of all the applications in our business, but increasingly they have to be part of the employee experience. We see the integration of systems of engagement and systems of record. All of our business apps with all of our communication and collaboration tools are increasingly coming together. There's a lot of desire, right, to start pushing these together into a more seamless user experience. Right, we saw this in the beginning with Slack, when it first arrived, something big and new where I can use almost everything from one place. Wasn't that exciting, right? Is that the new intranet, or is that the new portal? And we're all looking for that. But it seems like collaboration tools is going to be the center. Some form of collaboration tool seems to be a natural home for this more seamless employee journey, more seamless employee experience, right? Where we're going to take the things that we've designed and the interesting eccentric activity on the margins that's happening with shadow IT, and always constantly trying to bring it in or push it back out, right? But this is what I call the digital workplace canvas that I find when I walk into most organizations, right? So systems of record, systems of engagement, productivity information tools, all disconnected, all different touch points that work differently. The amount of time it takes to onboard someone to use all these has gone from a month to 2 months, right, in the last 20 years. And that number is going to continue to go up, just to train people to be effective. There's really good data showing that new workers' biggest challenges is that we keep giving them more technology, and they actually want it. They want more technology because it's useful. It's a force multiplier. That's why we use technology. It makes things easier once you get to learn how it works, once you know the possibilities. And so we give them so much to deal with. So I often look for clues for what's the next thing, what's going to be the solution, right? We're all looking for some way to be able to meet these expectations, right? Which are laudable. These are good expectations that we should want to meet. And so another key to sustainability, right? And perhaps the biggest lesson of the digital age is you don't have to do it all yourself. That you can let the network do the work, right? We've learned this with collaboration. We learned this with crowdsourcing. We learned this with open source software. I can tell you chapter and verse. I wrote a whole book about it, Social Business by Design. There are 100 major kind of game-changing examples. I said, if all these new technologies are so good, there should be plenty of examples to point to. And when I went digging, there was. Plenty. I cite data for each one of those about why the needle moved. And I discovered a common pattern among all those 100 use cases, right? People using digital workplace tools, that was the subject of the book, to do amazing things that were never before possible, right? And the trick is to tap into something larger than yourself. Anyone should be able to participate. And that's a core pattern. We've seen this over and over again. Again, open source software projects, right? The number one way that complicated software is produced, business software, consumer software, everything, is through mass participation. Someone has a good idea, they start it, and everyone else joins in, right? So I began to see very similar things happening in organizations. And in fact, I now believe that it's not the key missing piece to the sustainability puzzle. So if we have digital workplace, and we got to transform it, right? Not incrementally improve it, right? Those days are gone. I know many of you are going to say, well, we're not staffed and budgeted for that, and that's the point I'm trying to make, is that those hungry for change will help you drive it. And so the last 4 or so digital transformation of the workplace projects I worked on. Large, global efforts. I only work on the ones that I'm likely to learn something interesting on, right? So I pick 1 or 2 projects a year, and they take, then they're facing all of these challenges I just told you about. They're fully aware of it. They usually have lots of surveys from new hires about what their expectations are, and they're always sky high, and they want all these things, and they expected all these things from looking at the brand on the outside and all of that. But your organization is filled with talented, smart people who have budgets of their own, by the way, who have ideas of their own, and they want to do things. They're not going to wait for you. And that's actually a tremendous asset. And so I'm from Washington, D.C. I work on a lot of government public sector projects where they have much worse problems than you guys. You probably some public sector in here anyway, but my point being, they've discovered this first. The first big example that's got a lot of publicity was the Federal Communications Commission. They regulate the internet, also the airways, but primarily the internet in the United States, and kind of define it for the world, right? The internet is our most important global medium that we have. The challenge when their new CIO, Dr. David Bray, came in a few years ago was that they had 300 applications that ran the business, and they were all in this aging data center with cables hanging from the roof. And it was a completely disorganized mess, but nobody was going to give him the budget to fix all of that. Years and years of technical debt. And that's, by the way, what a lot of us are facing in our organizations. We got used to some of the slow upgrade cycles of the enterprise vendors. Those have gone away to a large extent. We're now getting releases so fast we can barely deal with them because the vendors realize if they don't, they're also going to be in trouble. So he came and said, there's no way I can fix this, right? And he came in and he was a young upstart. And he said, okay, so I'm going to need everyone on deck in the organization to do this. Who wants to be? And this is one of the biggest lessons that I've had in digital transformation efforts, is that we used to try and think we had to transform everybody and everything. And we don't. We can only transform the willing. Right? The people who want to change. You can't impose change on people. They have to internalize it. They have to want to do it. So you fast forward to those people, right? And this is where the change agents conversation has come from. And it's a big thing. So David Bray enlisted change agents. I need ideas. I need the best ideas you have. I want to use all of my OpEx at the beginning of next year, my operational expenditure, and use it to move all of this out to the cloud, right? And he got a lot of takers. And by the way, when he said he needed ideas from change agents, not just inside the organization, anywhere in the world. He put a call out. He said, I need all the best ideas that we can get, things that you have either done before or you know of, and he evaluated many of them. And he achieved that transformation. Right, there's this great picture that he posted on Twitter of the empty data center, right? Gone by the end of the year. Everything moved, right? Moving 300 applications, right? So that's a big deal. That's something you would not normally see. But he did it using a cast of thousands, or cast of hundreds in his particular case. So this is a key to the sustainability puzzle. But oh, by the way, we've got more challenges. And this is going to be an increasingly conversation in your area. We're not going to go take a deep dive here, but it's one of the biggest untapped opportunities in your organization. That is the low level of employee engagement in most organizations. Right? Over half are significantly underengaged. They're just doing the absolute minimum. And one of the things we explored in more detail yesterday was, can we use technology to improve employee engagement? And the answer is yes. Right? But the worst thing you can do is give smart people bad tools to use to do their job and say you can't change that. You have to do an awful job using terrible tools. And smart people won't stay around for that. Technology has a direct impact on employee engagement. That's just one example, by the way. It's a good one, though. And so that's another thing that it looks like a tax again on our time, but it's a tremendous opportunity that you can use to get the budget that you can use to tap into change agents, right? Because our other challenge is, unlike every other type of information technology, digital workplace is usually perceived as optional. There's a few mandatory things, email, right? Maybe mobile access, although that even seems to be quite debatable. And so we have this challenge is adoption isn't automatic. And so you can move really, really fast and provide solutions that nobody wants to use. The key is the employee experience must be designed around a value exchange, a value proposition. Not just for the business, because that's how we tend to design things. So you have to use the system and do this, and the thing you want will pop out, even if that experience is an awful one, right? People vote with their feet. They will use the technology that is easiest to get and fastest to get the job done. Easiest and fastest to get the job done. So we have to design these experiences that brings that user centricity back. But again, that involves that close contact with everyone out there, much more than before. In fact, the more and more I do these types of projects, I spend more time talking to everyone out there in the organization. It used to be we would do some surveys and we'd do a few interviews. Right now I have a much more elaborate process, because until you get ground truth about what really is needed out there, and of course you have to map it. The things that they often ask for aren't what they really need. You say, well, that's one way of looking at it, but there's a much better way, right? That's our job as consultants in the organization. We have to understand that value exchange. How can we maximize that? Because they have choice. They can go to the cloud. They can go to the app stores. They can provide an outsourcing provider, a service provider. Anyone will give them what they want, right? I talked to a CIO, who became a good friend of mine of the Washington Post company, who said, I can't actually make anyone do anything in our organization because we're a conglomerate, right? I can only plead with them. So I said, that's fine. You can go and talk to anybody you want out there, but come to me before you buy anything, and I won't be the cheapest, but I know you better than anyone else on the outside, and I bet you I'll give you the best overall value. And that's essentially our job now, digital workplace. And so the issue has always been that the business and the digital workplace have had this gap, that we give them what we have, and they have to they have to walk that last mile and say, we're going to adapt to those tools, right? We're going to learn them. And that bar is getting too high now, especially since they have so many more pieces of technology they have to use. They need much greater efficiencies, a much greater employee experience. And the new model is that that's really going to become one and the same. How things get done are going to be defined by the experiences that you create, right? That you and your change agents will create together. So this is actually happening. I collect case studies. We don't have time to go through a lot. That's what the workshops were for yesterday. But one of my most impressive news stories, brand new, one of the largest organizations in the world, and large organizations have much more challenging problems than even one step down to merely, pretty good size. And this is a story of Accenture, and I talk every few months with Andrew Wilson, who is their CIO, our global CIO. And he says, here's my top priority. And he says, here's the CIO's workplace at the top, right? My top priority is to enable our employees to get their jobs done. And this is his framework he published. It says, I'm going to take the top 100 moments in the organization, the top things that we do, that we do often and or are most important in our organization, and I'm going to build beautiful, best practice-based experiences. You can still use the underlying tools if you want, but this will be an easier, better, faster way of getting those important things done, like finding and building a team, right? Running a project, right? Retiring an old piece of technology, whatever it is. The top 100 moments, and he has a criteria he uses. And last time I talked to him, which was 2 months ago, I said, well, how are you doing? How far have you gotten? He goes, we're almost at the bottom of the list. And I go, what's you're going to do next? Well, we're probably going to go back and do the next 100. So you see these high-performing organizations. Accenture is one of the most profitable large companies in the world. They're very successfully using these new technologies, and they're very proud of this, to say, we're going to get rid of these isolated, fragmented touch points. We're going to focus on the user and their needs and what the business needs too at the same time, and build these accelerated, simplified, streamlined experiences that takes the friction out of doing things the right way, right? So we're starting to see people closing that employee experience gap, right? And we have the technology to do it now. We don't have time to go over it in this session, right? But the technology now exists to move and do these things very fast that are not massive customizations, huge projects, although this certainly isn't inexpensive to do. So the employee journey is going to be as much about them and what the individual employee is as much about what the business needs, right? So HR and IT are coming together. More and more now I'm working with projects where the CIO has sponsored it and the CHRO has contributed funds and co-sponsors it. This is tech change and human change together, as we also need to build skills. So in the the digital workplace experience Twitter hashtag, there was a lot of discussion here about training and education and skill building, because these tools are so powerful and we're only using like 5% of them. I think that's the actual official industry stat. We only use 5% of the features, and usually not the ones that have the power, right? The amazing things that we need to do. So we're seeing this collapsing of this digital experience at the top with the human experience, the end-to-end employee life cycle, right? To consciously map how are we handling the employee from the very beginning through to the very end, right? Every one of those steps is important. And we have digital experience that can support that. And we're not talking about just we're not just going to automate document management. That's a laudable goal. But as part of an experience that helps the business and the user, that's the new bar. And this will almost certainly require a more integrated digital workplace. Right? So a work environment where it's all about them and all of their applications, sanctioned in some shadow IT that you are going to be experimenting with, in a more unified experience, right? Perhaps even a single experience. That's certainly what Accenture is trying to do. Again, for the core, not for every single thing the company does, right? And so I've been debating a lot, both online and these types of venues. Where's the best hub? We don't know that. Is it the enterprise social network? Is it the intranet? Your mileage will vary, right? You're going to have to figure this out for your organization, right? Where's the home for these new experiences? How do we do it? And it's got to be data-driven. Lots of data showing that we're only measuring what's easy, right? This is, the classic, the number of active users, number of page views, number of searches, number of documents downloaded. Those are terrible metrics, but they're all we have. That's what we take and declare success, right? I ask people, how many have business measures about how much you improved, employee satisfaction or productivity or sales or anything like that? One person raised up their hand, and that it can't be that way, right? We've got to do better, and so we're going to design this core employee experience together with our change agents, the people who most want to help us drive change across the whole organization. I built a large digital change agents network in a large company. We drew in over 2,000 people, and we got a really good core of about 100 change agents, people who, in their corner of the organization, they really knew what they wanted to do. They were passionate, but they didn't have the skills or the resources or the mandate or the permission, and they could get all of that through that, right? And so we take that core experience, we help our change agents do the rest. That's the future of digital workplace. It has to be. There is no other way we know how to scale this, how to go faster, how to be sustainable, right? That's what we need to do. There will be other solutions to this, right? But this is the one that we know of today, right? That will work. And so I leave it to you. We got to create these vibrant experiences together, co-create them, right, with the business for the most valuable digital journeys, right, into meaningful employee experiences that address all the things we just talked about here, right? It's really important. And so what I would put to you is that we're probably not going to be able to meet these expectations ever unless we work differently, we collaborate more broadly, more openly, right? We don't have good words for this, right? Because it's all new. We've never had the ability to do this very easily. Now we do. We've never had to do this before. Now we do. So we're just now trying to figure out these best models. So whether it's you call it a new form of center of excellence, or I call it networks of change is another model. It doesn't matter. We have to collaborate much more deeply and broadly with our stakeholders, right? They will give us the resources, the power, the energy, all right, to be part of your digital workplace program at scale. And I have actively seen the acceleration for organizations that are willing to do this, right? And for example, in DC, there's now a whole little change agents communities of practice. They exchange what they did in their agencies to make these happen, because they have even starker resource requirements and scale challenges than you have. So the future, that's what we're all facing, right? And it's an exciting one. You actually have a lot greater assets, more capability and capacity than you ever realized if we look at it at this new lens, right? That we can enlist foot soldiers. And we've learned in digital in general is when digital works really well, works. You turn that knob to the right to get the real effect. And that's what all the, if you look at the largest digital winners out there, they don't play half measures on this. If something works, they do it all the way. And you almost certainly will find yourself there. But the features, it's interesting. I ordered my first personal robot the other day. It's called Curry. Get Curry.com. I'm not advertising it, but it's a very interesting little personal robot that has facial recognition, Alexa built in. It's a little bot that'll follow me around the house if I ask it to, and I can ask it, give it Alexa commands, right? I can tap into it remotely from wherever I am. It's going to change the way I live, and we're seeing the same thing in the workplace. All the innovation labs I tour in large companies have these types of things. Drones are going to be everywhere, carrying 5G antennas, packages. They're going to be part of the digital workplace. I'm now seeing the first meeting devices where a silent drone hovers over the table and points the camera at whoever's talking. All that's coming. Artificial intelligence will be in everything. And all of this will be connected. This is the singularity thing. We were like, well, that's going to be really far off. Well, that is increasingly here is everything is going to be connected, especially digital workplace. Every object pretty soon in the real workplace will be connected to the digital workplace, throwing off data 24/7. And we'll have the quantified enterprise and be able to do amazing performance management and innovation with all this data that we never had before. So that's why it's important. This stuff is coming, and it still sounds far-fetched. It's actually coming very quickly. And so we got to get our house in order. We have to think differently. We have to be far more elastic in both the way we think about digital workplace, what it's going to look like, how encompassing it's going to be, because increasingly we're all living purely digital lives. Almost, still walk around, but we get all of our information, we connect to everyone, right? And it's an opportunity. So I hope you find that kind of a useful thought provoker for the next couple of days. We have big challenges and big opportunities, but we now have some hope. But there are some ways of moving forward. A lot of what I talked to you about here, I've done a lot more detailed actual work on, and you can find my writings about it online, my case studies and those sorts of things. So this is really happening in some places. But like William Gibson says, the future is here, but it's just very unevenly distributed. So let's all kind of distribute it around a little bit more. Thank you very much. I think they're going to let us you guys ask a couple questions.
Do we have any questions for Dion? I think we can take one or two. Raise a hand. Okay.
All right, got one right here.
Hi. This might be a bit of an oddball question because I'm an oddball in this audience of technical people. I'm an architect, a physical architect of workplaces, and I came here because of the digital workplace, seeing that more as a platform for experiences beyond just the dimensions that we're talking about here. Are you or anybody else thinking about the integration of the digital workplace with the physical workplace and how those two influence each other?
Absolutely, and it really varies by the type of organization you're talking about. But increasingly, we're seeing as a good portion of the workforce is virtual. They're out on customer sites, so they're out selling things. Executives are traveling. We're seeing the shrinking of the physical spaces, right? A little bit, not so much office space. But when people go in there, they want to have collaborative spaces, right? That are augmented with all kinds of technology. So we're seeing, tools like Oblong and others that allow you to basically break the barrier between physical and virtual and make them one and the same, right? So that everyone in a meeting room can have the physical experience, and anyone not there can literally almost have the same experience. And you can pull a slide up onto the wall, mark it up, and then send it back out to everyone who's not there. Those types of things are real. Hot desking, where you walk into a room and your RFID chip in your badge makes that generic office, which is almost blank. It puts all your favorite pictures on the digital frames, right? Moves your phone number there. I'm trying to think of all the things. We actually built a prototype where we did all of these types of very amazing customizations, right? So, there was a little nameplate, a digital nameplate on the outside of the office that put your name. You were put on the company directory automatically, just with the mere act of walking it in and confirming via voice that you wanted to use this for your office for the day. So it's those types of collapsing of the experience. And now I've seen people are actually using projectors in the room so that you can bring your coworkers in. You can see, have them literally sitting in your office, even though they're sitting in their office, right? But they're projected on the wall, or you can change the wallpaper. I mean, so people want these, and again, these new generation of workers expect these type of experiences. And so there's both Herman Miller and Steelcase and are doing all kinds of interesting things in that space right now, so I encourage you to look at that.
So unfortunately,
For time, yeah, I'll be outside.
A little
at the
run
break.
outside, but thank you so much, Dion. Give another
Thank you.
hand.